Hello chaps, today's video is called What is a Web API? My name's Pete, I am the founder of LogiCrew. We help companies build brilliant internal software teams and also create apps at our office in Reading. So this was actually requested to me. It's a very basic video about APIs, which are something that are commonly used when you want to build distributed systems that have lots of moving parts that are talking to each other, and also when you need mobile apps and web apps to communicate with your infrastructure inside your network. So I've received a request to do a video on an API, so I just wanted to try and run through it so that you can understand what an API is and how you might be able, how you might integrate it into your digital platforms. So we're going to start at this side of the board, and then we're going to just sort of move through it. So if we just take a use case of two types of computer, essentially. One is a mobile phone and one is a laptop. We may run some sort of software, an app on a phone and a web app on the laptop. And we may want to store information. So an API is used when you actually want to persist information in a network. So if you actually wanted to store information on either of these devices, you would write an app that is loaded into the device but can actually talk out through the web to another part of your network. In this case, what I've done here is I've created a part of this app called Customers. So we can imagine this might be a customer relationship management system that has to store records about customers. And typically when you want to do some sort of data persistence across a network, either from a mobile app or a laptop, there are four things that you're going to want to do. The first one is you're going to want to create some sort of record, okay? Great. So that would mean when you might you might have a form that the user may want to actually create a new type of customer in the app, okay? The second type of operation we may want to do is we may want to read. And reading may be where you have a list of customers that you've just created and you may want to actually read them back and display them on a screen. The next type of operation you're going to want to do when you want to persist data across a network is you may want to update a record. You may want to update a customer record, okay? And finally, when you've created records, you've read records and you've updated records, you may decide that you now no longer need that record, and so you'd want to do some sort of delete command, okay? And those are basically the four types of operations when you build software, when you build mobile apps or you build web apps, that if you are doing some sort of business software, those are typically the sort of operations that need to happen. So in your app, when those operations happen, we don't want to persist that information on the actual the machine in question. We actually want to send that across the network to somewhere else, and that's where a web API comes in. So if we imagine on the other side of our network, we have a database, and that database is actually responsible for the persistence of these records that get sent across the network. Okay, and in order to persist that information to a database, what we have to do is we have to run a server, which is essentially just another machine on the network that will actually talk to the database, and what that will do is that will actually expose via something called HTTP. It will expose an area of code that will allow you to actually apply these sorts of operations and also send data that these apply to across the network, okay? And this is what basically a web API is. It's basically just a server that's running that allows you to persist data across the network, okay? And we have these four types of operations, and when we want to use a web API and we introduce this concept of HTTP, and by the way, HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and HTTP is basically the protocol of the web. Okay, so no different to how the Royal Mail uses the postcode system to actually deliver mail, and the web uses HTTP to deliver messages, and in our case to deliver some sort of persistence across the web. In the world of HTTP, our four basic operations that we need to do on our mobile device or on our laptop have a corresponding type of operation that happens on an API. Okay? And these are, the first one that relates to creating a record is called post. The one that relates to reading a record is called get. Update is called put. And delete, finally, is still delete. Okay? Now, just for the record, I may have got these, may have actually put these two the wrong way around. But fundamentally, what we actually have is these are just basic operations that map directly across to our types of operations. The semantics of it aren't really too important, but what's really important to realise is that basically on the web there is a standardised way of actually mapping what you actually need to do on your device to a standardised form of communication that's all bound back to this standardised way of communicating called HTTP. So basically what a web API does is it allows us to use the web to actually map requests across a network that relate to the types of operations that we would want to do on an app, either a mobile app or a web-based app. And there we have it. That is basically what a web API is. If you actually want to learn more about web APIs, one thing that you can do is you can actually open up your browser. If you just search for any type of browser and you type in you find the developer console on the browser, there's a small bit of the browser that will pop up and you can actually start to look at the sort of requests that are going backwards from any sort of app that's actually running on your browser, which is quite an interesting way to have a look at what's going on. But fundamentally, that's all a web API is a way to use a standardized form of communication to get these machines talking to each other. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, please click like and write something in the comments. If you have any questions, happy to answer those. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you.